Welcome back to the Purpose Babe Show, friend. I am your host, Corie Clark, and I am so thankful that you are tuning in today. I have a great episode for you today, and I'm just really excited about this year. I'm excited about where things are headed. I am working on a few special projects, one of them with a friend, and the other is just kind of like a whole revamp for the Purpose Babe Society. So if you're not in the society yet, make sure you get on the wait list because we are going to have some pretty amazing things in store for the waitlist babes, and we are going to have some new content in there. We're refreshing some old content. We're just creating this amazing portal and program and community for you if you are a personal brand and you are the face of your brand, or if you want to learn how to become the face of your brand and why that's so important, then you need to get on the wait list because it's going to be an amazing year inside the Purpose Babe Society. So you can go to CorieClark.com/VIP to get on that wait list now. Like I said, there will be special things in store for the wait list women. And while you're waiting for the doors to open to that, we do have a free community as well. So go ahead, hop into the free community. I'm going to put the link in the show notes. And inside there, you can meet women who are also growing their businesses on purpose, trying to live more purposeful. And I give you guys sneak peeks to some of my podcast episodes. So you get to watch actually on video the interviews that I'm doing, and you get to watch them before they come out on the actual podcast. So it's a really fun place to be. I've got my interview in there with Dave Hollis, and that's on video. You can watch that. So head to CorieClark.com/community or follow the link in the show notes and hop in there, introduce yourself. I can't wait to get to know you. So on to today's interview. I am chatting with my friend Phylis. Now, Phylis she was in my Purpose Babe Society, and then she decided, it was time to level up, and then she joined my mastermind. And she has just blossomed into the most amazing businesswoman. She already is an amazing woman, but it's just been so fun to watch her grow her business and to grow her brand. And she has written a book, and she's a coach now, and just so many amazing things. And in our interview, she is sharing some tips on, writing your first book or writing a memoir and what that process looks like, some things that you need to take into consideration before you write it and how that process works. But there are so many nuggets of wisdom in the interview, and I cannot wait for you to listen. And especially if you are a woman, if you've ever struggled with your relationship with your mother, this is a great interview to listen to as well, because that's what her book is about. So let me read you her bio before we jump into the interview. Phylis is a wife, mother, and Phee Phee to her 2 grandchildren. She's the author of the book Unmothered, Life with a Mom Who Couldn't Love Me. She's a coach, a mentor, and an advocate for helping young women break the generational dysfunction of growing up with mothers who are difficult and broken. She's the co-host of the podcast 24 Carat Conversations with her best friend, Rhonda Velez. They talk about all things women and how to be supportive and collaborative in a world where too much divide is happening. She loves the beach, cooking in her kitchen for her family and friends, and will almost always break out in a dance when the mood strikes her. All right, you guys, enjoy the interview. All right, you guys, I am so excited to introduce you to my friend Phylis. Phylis, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm just so excited that you said I was your friend.
You are. I mean, yes,
I
you were
know.
a client, but yes, you're a friend too.
At this point, yeah, we've spent a whole year together.
I know.
So yeah, I'm good.
Good. Awesome. Well, I'm so excited to have you here. I would love if you would just share a little bit of a backstory about, what led you to actually, well, finding me and how we started working together, because that kind of leads into what we're going to talk about today. So I would love if you just gave us a little bit of a backstory.
Yeah, well, I became a writer at 61 years old. I wrote my first book called Unmothered: Life with a Mom Who Couldn't Love Me. And I actually started following you because of the Purposeful Planner. Needed to schedule my life and get all that in order. I loved the way your planner looked and all the different things that came with it. And so that was my first introduction to you, as I think I was kind of a fangirl. And then you started offering coaching and things like that. And so one of the things that was a beautiful transition was after I wrote the book, I kind of became an expert in that field of the mother-daughter wound. And so people had even more questions and more things. And so I started helping one-on-one with that. But pre-COVID, right before COVID hit, I had an opportunity to take a certification class in coaching for writing and speaking, which was not even in the plans. And it was like, well, God had other plans because COVID hit. I started that class in October of 19. And then, we all know January through March just started going downhill. So during that time, I was studying for my certification in that, and got certified as a writer speaker coach around April. And that was amazing because it just veered off into a different thing. But then, it's just funny. Like every time you start one little project, it builds into another project and another idea. And so then I thought, oh, maybe I could teach courses too instead of one-on-one. And that's where you came in, because you started teaching a master class. And so we just bounced ideas back and forth over this whole last year. And I finally got that course up and running for the Memoir.
Yay.
Yeah. So
That's so exciting. Awesome. Well, I do want to talk about like your writing process and writing a memoir, but I do think that there are probably women that listen to this show that could benefit from your book. Before we jump into your expertise on writing and coaching and speaking and that kind of stuff, I would love if you would share a little bit about your book and who it's for and who you help.
Yeah. So I'll just do a little backstory of, I grew up in a really violent, dysfunctional family. And my mom was an alcoholic and suspected bipolar. She was a narcissist, like all the things, very highly depressed and manic. And so we never really knew what we were coming home to. And the story starts out that my mom was actually having an affair. My father was a long distance truck driver, and my mom got pregnant. And because the father of that child was a different nationality, she couldn't pass that child off as his. And so she basically kidnapped us and took us to the next town, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but you have to remember in 1965, there was no computers. Not everyone had a phone. It was just very old school of like, my father came home to an empty house and no family. And my life changed at 8 years old. And I went through the whole roller coaster of all this dysfunction. My sister was born, and I have an older brother. And so it was just a lot of stuff going on where my mom was physically abused with all of the men in her life. And so I saw a lot of physical abuse. Patched up a lot of physical abuse. And so those habits became really dysfunctional for me as a young girl trying to find what love meant. I had a skewed vision of that. So pretty much did all the wrong things. And at 35, I became a Christian and really realized that I I was married. I was in a second marriage and I was pregnant with my second daughter. And I realized I had to change the trajectory of how I grew up if I wanted to raise this healthy family. In the meantime, my mom came back in my life and I ended up taking care of her until she passed from dementia. So it was just this long evolved story of like forgiveness, change, renewal, just these things where I had to learn how to raise up the next generation differently, break the generational chains, but at the same time, love a mom who was unlovable. And so that's how the book came about. I would share at small groups and all these young girls would come up to me and say, I'm struggling with this dysfunctional mom too. Can I talk to you? And for about 10, 15 years, that was happening. I was like a co-leader of small churches. And so finally I just said, I think I need to write a book.
Yes.
Because this is something that is happening not just to me, but all over the world. And so that just organically happened through the book. And then the coaching came along with that. And I was telling you earlier, I'm working on the second book of now breaking down the 6 life lessons that I've learned from growing up with a dysfunctional mom.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And you do have a program that you can work with these women who are struggling with this, right?
Yeah, it's on our website. It's called Patience and Grace.
I love it. Yeah, that's awesome. So then, if if that resonated with you, Phylis is honestly amazing. I've seen her in action and I know that she's helped so many women. And so, while that wasn't necessarily the purpose of the podcast today, I really wanted women to know, because I feel like there are, like you said, if you share your story, people come up and they're like, they resonate with it. Something, triggers them inside and they're like, oh my gosh, like, I think I need to get some like healing in this part of my life. So if that's you listening, please reach out to Phylis because she's amazing. And I know she can help you. But so as you then started writing your book, what were some of the things, like some of the hurdles you had to work through that you think might be common for anybody else who might be wanting to write a memoir?
Yeah, well, first of all, there's a couple things. You have to make sure that you're at the end of your story. If you're going to write a memoir, you can't be in the middle of the journey because the ending won't end well. I waited until my mom had passed before I wrote this book because I didn't want to dishonor her and insult her in that way. I understand that there was a mental illness involved, there's just, and one of the things too that I realized is that when I looked back, there was a lot of dysfunction through the generations. So she was abused as a child. So it was just continuing. So I think you have to decide how you want it to be written and if you've gone through the whole phase. My kids were grown at the time, so I could say honestly that I had raised these children up to change and break that generational dysfunction. I couldn't have done that while I was still raising them because I didn't know how it was going to turn out. And so that's the first thing, is just make sure that you're protecting people. I had to change names in the book because I didn't want to go and ask permission. If you do write about someone in their name, you do have to get a signed release, making sure that they're okay with it. So that's a big one. If you're doing memoirs, you want to make sure that you're not just throwing names out there and throwing people under the bus. And I think the other thing with writing, in any writing thing, is that people forget that you are marketing yourself. And so you really have to be on point with your social media, with blogging, with having a website, those kind of things. And that's something that I go through in my course first off. And so people may think okay, show me how to write. And I'm like, before you learn how to write, you have to have a platform where people know who you are, because you can't just sell the book to 10 people, your friends and family, and then you have to build a following. And so I talk a lot about that, and also meeting with people that possibly could help get your book going, like an editor, a publisher, an agent. You have to have your 30-second commercial going to say who you are and why you're writing this book. You don't want to tell them the whole story. You're going to bore them to death and they're going to walk away. So you have to have a 30-second commercial kind of in your head of like, this is who I am. This is what the book's about. This is why I'm writing it. Boom, done.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are great tips. Now, did you already have a blog before you started writing your book, or is that something that someone suggested to you? How did that process look for you? Because I mean, I've had a blog for years, but some people, I do have a friend that reached out and wants to write a book. So I'm obviously referring her to you, but that's one of the things she doesn't have. And so I know that's something she needs.
You do, because it's part of the extension of your website is you want to have something on there, and a blog is a really easy thing. And also if you're a writer, you have lots of ideas in your head and lots of thoughts. And so you just put them on paper and you post them. Those also can be posted to your social media. So like I posted a blog this week and my daughter threw it up on LinkedIn, and I've had 3 people comment on it already.
Wow.
Resonated with them. So I actually went to my first writers conference when I had an idea in my head that, hey, maybe I do want to write this book. Now I need to learn how to write a book. And the first class I went to was a platform class, and I didn't even know what a platform was. I was like, what is this? I don't even know what's a platform. Like, I don't know. And so she told us that we needed to have a blog and you needed to have a website. It's the number one thing when you get the idea of writing in your head. You have to get your website domain name. You got to search for your name, first of all, to make sure that it's available. And if you're not ready yet, you think, well, I don't want to write my book for another 3 years. Pay for your domain name, because once somebody takes it, you don't have it anymore. And so you want to make sure you own the rights to your name. And sometimes with common names, you have to add an initial or something like that, but add a lot of stuff to it. Like try to keep it as simple as possible, because that is your business card. And so when, just like right now, at the end of this, we'll say, how do we find you? And it's myname.com. That's it. And so if you keep it as simple as possible, that's great. I have some friends that started before me, and they came up with these fancy, like catchy little phrases, and that was their .com. And I'm like, well, people aren't going to be able to find you because they don't remember the phrases like you do. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you don't own your own name, domain name,
get it now.
Then get it now. Even if you don't want to write a book, you just never know. You never know. I think I bought my name before I even started my blog, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah. And the other thing I did was I bought the domain name to unmothered.net. The .com was taken already, but I thought book is my first book baby, and it kind of goes along with my coaching. You can buy domain names of things that you think, you might use. It can go under the umbrella of your name on your website, but it can be an extension. So anything to do with the Patience and Grace or Unmothered, anything to do with mother-daughter dysfunction can go under the umbrella of unmothered.net too.
Yeah, exactly. Now, did you go a traditional route? Do you have a publisher, or did you self-publish? What did that process look like for you?
So I ended up going with what they call a hybrid self-publisher. So a hybrid self-publisher has all of the team behind you. You don't have to piecemeal all the things. When you self-publish, it's like you got to find an art director, you have to find an editor, and you're paying for all those things separately. With a hybrid, you pay up front, but you get access to a project manager, an editor, an art designer, an Amazon marketplace person, like all these things, and your publisher, who Athena Dean Holtz, one of my other best friends. So I went with Redemption Press, and they have been amazing to me. They promote me all the time. They've just been like family. Traditional publishing is really hard to get into. So the pros and cons. Traditional publishing, you can get in advance up front, so they pay you. But also what happens is a lot of time you can submit something and they could hold it. So they can be looking at it for a year and then to bring it back to you and say, yeah, I don't think it's not relevant anymore. We're not going to use it. And so if you exclusively give to a traditional publisher, they could hold on to your works for a long time. 61, when I started pitching, I don't have 10 years to wait around for a tradition. So it really matters. It just depends on like what you're looking for. A lot of people will do a Kickstarter campaign because with a hybrid, you do have to pay up front for your work, but then your book is yours and you can, sell it yourself and do whatever you want with it. So
yeah, that's good.
So sometimes people will do a Kickstarter campaign if they don't have that money, up front. They have other people help out, and people that believe in their work will pay for that. Who sold like T-shirts that match the theme of their story, like all kinds of creative things. So it really just depends on what route you want to go. But, traditional, even nowadays, because of COVID and stuff, it's harder to do book signings and things like that. It's getting harder and harder to get into traditional publishing. So unless and again, this goes down to platform. If huge platform, traditional publishers will take you right away. If you don't, they're like, well, who's going to buy this book? So it boils down to that. It boils down to you. And even actually, I know some people that have big platforms and they're still kind of hesitant. So it depends on how long you want to, if you're not in a rush and you want to go traditional route, I mean, there's some amazing companies out there.
Yeah.
A little bit harder.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the hybrid's a great option. I self-published my first book, and, I say first because I do have another book in me. It's not written yet, but, and
don't be a one and done.
No, I won't be, because that's actually not even the book I wanted to write, but, I did self-publish it, and it was a great experience. And, I really just did it because I didn't know what I was doing. And I was just kind of like, oh, let's just try this and see what happens. Kind of like the story of my life with my business.
It works for you.
And it works. Well, that's the thing. You just got to try stuff. And if it works, then awesome. You've got something. If not, you try something else. But I think the hybrid's such a great option. And so, now you said you had a whole team. So did you have any control over that? Or was it like, here's your designer, here's your project manager, or like how much control did you have over the process?
I had total control with like such a great backing. So they would ask me, what do you think you want the cover to look like? And I was like, gosh, I hadn't even thought of that. And so I started thinking about it. I had this idea and I sent it to the designer. Well, he came back with a couple of prototypes, and one of them I really liked. And then my publisher saw it and she said, you can't do that. And I go, why? And she goes, you're going to insult some, I had praying hands with rosary beads because my mom used to do that. And she said, insult like the Catholic church, the rosary beads. And that wasn't my intent. And so, I was so grateful that she like stopped the presses because we were to do it. She said, no, you can't do that. And so, she got me on the phone and we had this conversation, and she started talking to me about the little girl that I was, and where's your favorite place to go? It's the beach, and we just started talking, and we created this design. And she said, let me take this back to the designer and see if he can come up with something. And that ended up being the cover of my book, of this little girl looking out into the ocean.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Back to us. And it was just like such a beautiful cover. And it was funny because when people see it, there's two reactions. They either take a deep breath, they go, oh, or they start to cry. And I'm like, oh, that's a good cover.
That is a good cover.
Yeah. They said the name attached to that picture just like catches their breath. And you really have to have someone that knows design and really works with you So that was one. And then two, I didn't know anything about writing and didn't even know if I could do it. And I have a wonderful, so I was lucky because, or I'll say blessed, because I had a managing editor. She gets a lot of these manuscripts thrown on her desk and then she assigns them to other people. And one of her partners came and said, "Hey, do you want us to take this or do you want to do this one?" And she said she started reading through it and she said, "Oh no, this is mine." So I got a managing editor, Dory, who's amazing. And she would call me and coach me through the chapters, which is super important because you don't know where you're going with this story. And she just knew how to hone in on things. And she would constantly tell me, "Show me, don't tell me, show me, don't tell me." So she wanted me to really get descriptive with a lot of things that happen so that the reader stayed connected. And then there was things where I didn't want to talk about. And she would say, "No, that's exactly what you need to talk about because people need to trust you and they need, you've actually gone through the things you've gone through so that they don't feel alone saying, well, she did this, but she doesn't really know me because she hasn't gone through this." It's like, oh, she did. Those tips are golden. Those are the things that I help. If I read someone's manuscript, it's helped me to look at that story and say, where can they dig in more here? Where can they hold back here? So it's like, it's the tension of a memoir. You want to hold their attention and hold them in tension just to the edge, but not quite all the way. And then you hit the middle of the story and then you bring them back down.
That's awesome. That's really cool that you had that coaching too. As part of the process. And so, I know that's what you're doing now is helping, women and I don't know, are you helping men too?
I mean, I will, but I probably do more women than men.
Yeah.
Men are a whole different breed.
True. How many men actually write memoirs?
Yeah. I actually had a couple of men that responded to my book, which was interesting. They had moms that were like that from a man's point of view. I wish there was a man that would write as growing up as a young boy, like what that like to not have a mom support you. But it was like their language is a little different and the standing is a little different. So I had some conversations with them, which was really eye-opening. But yeah, it's a completely different way of looking at things.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. Okay. Oh, I was going to ask you something and now I totally blanked. So Ryan will have to cut this part out of the podcast. Sorry, babe. I try to keep things flowing as much as possible, but then it's because I got on the whole man tangent and I wasn't planning on it. Okay. So let's say like, if there's somebody listening and they are like, gosh, I've always wanted to, write a book about my life. I know you said, obviously they need like a website and a platform and that kind of stuff, but as far as like the writing process, what would be like, maybe just a couple tips for them if they're just sitting down to start like getting it all out of their head and onto paper. What did that look like for you? Because I'm sure it's different for a lot of people, but what did that look like for you when you actually started writing?
Yeah, it is so different for everybody. And some people are more organized and some people do these like they have these programs, Scrivener and all these different things for writing. I'm just like, I'm a PDF girl. Not techie, so I just go on Word and it has there are rules, it's like Times New Roman 12 double space, like there are rules that you have to do to turn in these book proposals and things, especially if you're going traditional route. Not so much if you're doing a hybrid, or obviously you don't even need an outline if you're doing self-publishing. You don't need a book proposal, you still need an outline. But I got those big white Post-it note and threw it up on the wall. And so I think it's just for me, the way my brain works, I would either put little smaller Post-it notes on there of like, okay, this could be a section in the book. Or even if we were trying to come up with a name, I had so many different titles for this book. And so I would write them all on this big Post-it. then I would break it down into sections of an outline of chapters. What would I want in this chapter? And then I had, at first I had different like Bible verses and things like that. And I didn't know if I wanted it to have that kind of a bent. And then I decided against that because I really wanted it to just be the story. And then the workbook will have more of like a spiritual bent to it. But I really wanted all kinds of people to read this book and understand like my journey.
Mm-hmm.
And through it. So I think you have to just download everything that's in your head and put it on this big Post-it note or in your computer or however. I have a woman right now that's handwriting the whole thing because she has I think she has dyslexia or something. It's very hard for her to type, which I said at some point you'll have to have a copywriter throw that up there because obviously you can't send in a handwritten thing if you're doing it a publisher, but she's actually doing it for her family right now, just to have a history, which I thought was great. And so she's just downloading on paper in a notebook, really whatever works for you. But for me, I feel like if you have something on the wall that you can just go to and write things on and have sections, that's really good. I have some writer friends that have 20 different colored Post-it notes and for the section. I mean, they're so organized.
Yeah.
Way too much. And they colored highlighters and all that. And so you can really figure it out however you want to do it. But I think you have to just get it out there and start thinking of what is the beginning, the middle, and the end of your story. I think if you start there, then you can start breaking it down into chapters. And then you can start breaking down names of the book and different things like that, like how you look.
Yeah. I think that's you've just got to, it's my favorite thing to do, a brain dump, and you've got to get it out of your head. And I have those big Post-it notes too. And so I use them anytime I'm going to like plan a launch or, reorganize something, whatever. It's just nice to get it up there. And I agree, like have it out on the wall where you can see it, because then when all of a sudden something comes to mind, you can go throw it on there and walk away and not worry about it. Like you're not going to forget it. Now it's there. So I love that tip. Was there anything that like surprised you in this process?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it all surprised. I think the most surprising thing is I think that you think that once this is done, like everything, I think I felt I was going to feel different when I held that book in my hands. Like I had waited so long. I thought I was just going to burst into tears and just be like screaming and shouting to the world. I opened that book and it kind of made me stop for a minute and just be surprised of like, I really did this.
Wow. Yeah.
I don't think you realize how hard it is to write 50,000 words. It's exhausting. The thing that surprised me, I would say too, is I got so sick of editing. There's a lot of editing if you're really working with someone who is trying to make that book well. I got sick of reading my own words. Halfway through, I was like, Dory, I don't want to edit this anymore. I'm so sick of reading my own story. And she said, I know, but it's necessary. And so I think you just like are surprised more than, some people scream and shout when they see that book in their hands. I was just like taken aback. Like, man, it was like, I couldn't even feel like I couldn't even cry. I was just looking at this book like, oh my gosh, I just did this.
Yeah.
A year and a half. It's a journey, and memoirs are hard because it's also cathartic for you that you have to really dig into some hard places. But I think the surprise was like my reaction to actually holding that book in my hand. And then I was just like, this is great. Like now I think I felt like now that I've actually accomplished that, I can accomplish other things.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that so much. And you have accomplished so much more since, I mean, you're
I'm
coaching these
trying.
women and you do speak. And do you feel like,
Yes.
how do you feel like that has that been a great marketing tool to help with your book, to be speaking and promoting it?
Well, it's everything. And especially it was so devastating when COVID hit because I had all these speaking engagements live, and that's always better to be in person and to be able to sell your book there and do things like that and be able to talk to people one-on-one afterwards. But I think using your voice so podcasting became a big thing, and we ended up starting our own podcast, my best friend and I. And so speaking really helps get the word out of who you are. People can hear you and then they trust you and then they want to buy the book. And so, or take your coaching or whatever it is that your platform is. But I think you have to really go out there and sell yourself, because even in the traditional publishers now, they don't have a huge marketing platform to help you. You have to really sell yourself. And that's one of the things they'll ask you is like, how are you going to promote this book? Well, your voice is the one that promotes that book.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And so it's important to just know how to speak in public and just talk to the people.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Oh man, I'm like so inspired by you, and I'm like ready to start writing my next book now.
Let's do it.
I know, it's like, oh, I just have to. I do have actually pieces of it written and just in a file on my computer.
Yeah.
And I started years ago, so who knows what it would be like now, but I am inspired to start writing. So I'm really excited. I'm excited for this year. And like you said, I mean, COVID really ended up, I mean,
but we can't let that stop us. I feel like there's more people now that need what we have.
Mm-hmm.
Ever before. That's what I'm finding is more people are reaching out now because they're like, well, if I couldn't do this other thing, then maybe I should change and do this now. And so a lot of people are like, well, I've always wanted to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is the time I should do that.
Yeah. And just embracing their dreams, because I think everybody realized really quickly, like, we don't have control over what happens to us. We can only control what we do. And so it's almost empowering to be able to be like, okay, you know what? I've always wanted to do this. Now I'm going to do it. So, so where can people find you? The people that either want to read your book or want to learn how to write their book, all that good stuff.
All the stuff. It's all on my website. Practice what I preach. It's under phylismantelli.com. So it's Phylis with one L, Phylis, Mantelli, Mantelli.com.
Awesome. And I will put the link in the show notes. And then I know, because I see you and I know that you are super active on Instagram. So is that your favorite place to connect with people outside of your website, or?
It is my favorite place. Okay. It's my playground.
It is. I know. And you do amazing. And honestly, you guys, like, if you're like, oh gosh, I could never do that. Like, I want to write a book, but I could never be on social media. Like, follow Phylis and watch what she does. She's a total natural, and she proves that you don't have to do anything fancy. You just have to show up and be yourself, because that's how you're going to attract your audience, is by being yourself. So I love seeing you on social media. Okay. So I like
seeing yours too.
I really was pretty non-existent in 2020 and with our move and everything. And so it feels so good to be back in the swing of things, back on the podcast, back on social media. It feels really good. So, okay. I always ask 2 questions. So the first question is, what is, like, if there is a new entrepreneur listening to the show, what is one piece of advice that you would give them?
Start taking your masterclass right away. I just think when you have an idea, so my whole thing is, if you have something that's burning in your heart, that your heart pounds when you think about it. Being an entrepreneur isn't for everyone, but when you know. Mm-hmm. And my biggest thing is never stop learning. I will never stop taking classes. I will always learn from the people before me. I'm ready to listen to anyone of any age. I'm not, ageist and only listening to the older people. It's like the younger people have something to say too.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to find whatever that niche is that you are looking for in that entrepreneurship, find the people that are experts in that and learn all you can from them.
Yeah, that's great advice. Great advice. And no, you should never stop learning. You should always be learning. I'm always investing into my education for, whatever it may be, whether it's tech stuff or branding or speaking or whatever it is. There's always somebody further ahead than you that you can learn from. So I think that's great advice. Okay, my last question is, what does living on purpose mean to you?
Oh, living on purpose is doing things that bring you joy. I just think at this point in my life, it's like living on purpose is waking up every day and just, even if I'm groggy, I just thank God for every morning and just like, I want my life to have meaning. And so I think living on purpose means what can I do? One of my prayers every morning is, how can I bless other people today? And I think that's the biggest thing in my life right now is I feel so blessed that God has given me the life that he's given me, even with all of the pain and sorrow that came with it along the way and still does. Like things still happen that break my heart. But in the midst of all that, I take a step back. I'm a grandma now, and I look at my family and where I've come from. And I'm like, I want to be able to teach that next generation that it is possible to break anything off that doesn't serve you anymore and create the life that you deserve and desire. So live that on purpose.
Yeah. I love that. That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Phylis. Thank you for being on the show. And I'm just excited to see your journey. And I will be linking to all of your goodness in the show notes. So you all go find her on the internet. She's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for tuning in, you guys. Be sure to check out Phylis's website, follow her on social media. I've got all the links in the show notes. And be sure you join that free community I mentioned at the beginning. Go to CorieClark.com/community. I cannot wait to get to know you better. And if you haven't done so yet, please leave a review on iTunes. Well, I guess it's Apple Podcasts now, but you know what I'm talking about. Go ahead and subscribe, rate, and leave a review. I greatly appreciate that. And when you leave your review, go ahead and put your Instagram handle in there because I love to connect on Instagram and I will hop on over to your account and say hello. So thanks so much, you guys, for tuning in. I will be back here next week on The Purpose Babe Show.